Why hello there, dear listener. I am your host, Erwin Blackthorn, and this is the Dirty Lore House podcast, coming at you with all the deliciously nutty dirty lore. Today, we are going to be talking about cultural appropriation and woke nonsense. It's nonsense. Doesn't mean anything to anybody, other than the people who want to use it for their own personal hedonistic benefit. So, what is it? Why are people going goo goo gaga over it? Why is it so popular among the left, the media, academia, it's in schools? It's starting to transfer over with this other thing called CRT, and that's going to schools, and people are trying to ban it. Hopefully they do. Looks like they're not. It's annoying, but let's go ahead and investigate what exactly it is. And along the way, I'll try to make it more or less funny so that it can be entertaining and more or less make sense of it, because it's very confusing if you try to define it for a particular thing, because there's so many people who try to make exceptions to the rules, and there's also a lot of people who try to obfuscate it so we don't know what the hell we're talking about, and then so they can hide in plain sight by, doing like a ninja smoke bomb in front of you. So wokism technically has a very broad definition. Most people claim that woke started from, I guess you can say, Black Twitter, or from like a Black Lives Matter kind of thing. Because you hear it all the time from, those kinds of people. They're saying, stay woke. And when I used to be younger, I thought that woke meant red-pilled. Boy, was I wrong. I thought that it was like alluding to how Neo woke up from the Matrix. But no, it's just basically saying don't sleep. Like, don't sleep on things that are racist. Don't sleep on things that are oppressing you. Don't sleep on things that need to be acted upon. Because apparently during the Black Lives Matter movement, when it was starting, they were saying, oh, all these people are sleeping on these issues that are happening with the police. But in reality, it turned out where it wasn't people sleeping on it, it's just that it wasn't actually an issue. I mean, it was it was technically an issue, but not for the way that they were saying it was. We had more people who were white being killed by the police, and then they're like saying, no, but here's the thing. We encounter the police more because we have more police in our areas, so it's a bigger problem for us, even though it actually wasn't. It was like the exact opposite. So, why do they see it in a way that's a problem for them when it's not actually a problem for them? Well, it's the same reason why a lot of people in the media, they call like a homogenous group of actors as a problem, because they think that if you have only one race in a particular setting, that's apparently removing the possible, removing the actual representation that they're supposed to be showing according to their own particular demands. They have a particular demand of representation because they're postmodernists. So this is why there's one definition that's made by a philosopher. I think he's a philosopher teacher. I'm pretty sure he's a philosophy teacher called Dr. Hans Georg Moller, right? Hans Georg Moller. And he defines it as a civil religion that is about identity politics, and in his own idea, it's about an American civil religion combined with German guilt pride. I know that's a lot of jargon, but I'm going to guide you through this because these are things we never hear about. What the hell's a civil religion? What the hell's identity politics? What the hell's German guilt pride? You can probably understand what German guilt pride is. It's pretty much just being cucked. Hating yourself and hating your race and hating your country because you have a history of something that you did wrong. Oh, look at that. There are people in America, they're saying, I'm sorry for being white. I'm sorry. I'm a man. I'm sorry for this. And they're hoping that they're going to be forgiven by the woke crowd. And lo and behold, they never get forgiven. They get canceled. They get fired. They get completely destroyed. And that's why people are saying, don't give in to the outrage. Don't give in to them. Not one goddamn step back. Don't apologize because you didn't do anything wrong. Don't try to reason with them because they're feral. And it's like trying to reason with, an enemy in the game programmed to kill you. You can't, there's no button to make them stop shooting you unless you put on God mode. And you don't really have that. You gotta go through the console. You gotta use those trainers. You gotta use a cheat code, but we don't have those in real life. So civil religion is when there's a religion that's not actually directed towards spirituality. It's directed towards civilization, civility, your fellow citizens. Civil religion started around the age of enlightenment. So when we talk about woke, we're almost talking about like as if they're trying to remake the age of enlightenment, like a neo-enlightenment. And that's how they see it as. They see it as this new reveal, this new like discovery of thinking and creating things for us to enjoy that's further away from God, further away from spirituality. But, that's not really how it works. That's not how civilization functions. That's regressive. That's just satanic. That's how civilizations fall. But, the Age of Enlightenment was all about discovering scientific purposes, scientific discoveries, philosophical discoveries, new ways of doing things. Modernism appeared. Nietzsche, he declared that God was dead because the Age of Enlightenment, we didn't need God to give us the answers. We had answers from science, from scientific discoveries, from physics, from chemistry, from all these new sciences that were popping up. And now all the old science was, the old proto-science was gone. It wasn't actually science, it was just spiritual gobbledygook, according to scientific purposes. But symbolically, they were all still valid. It's just that there was no scientific purpose. Bloodletting from leeches, throw that away, right? Thinking that you can kill a witch by drowning her or burning her, throw that away, right? Thank God. But now we have a new kind of witch burning. So that's why I say right away, it's not progressive at all. It's regressive because now we have new ways of witch burning. We don't burn witches anymore with fire and drowning. Now we destroy their business and cancel them. That's the way you defeat the witch now. But I'm skipping ahead, too much foreshadowing. Civil religion is pretty much just religion without the spirituality, and instead you almost have to pray and you have to worship the government above you. If you look up civil religion, it would say that it's a public profession of faith that aims to inculcate? What the fuck uses the word inculcate? Political values, and that prescribes dogma, rights, and rituals for citizens of a particular country. So another thing you can call it is nationalist religions. And this is actually what started Nazism. This was what started communism, or it's not communism. When you talk about the USSR, you had to call it Stalinism. Then later on, I guess you can consider it Marxist-Leninism, Maoism. It's the same reason as why now we have people, when they talk about Fauci, they treat him as a religious figure. They have candles of him. They have statues of him. They have, he has a candle. He has pictures of himself in his own room because he's just showing off the religious merch. He's the prophet of their religion. And their religion is Scientism. And Scientism is different than science. Scientism is about you find your morals and you find your values in science. Science isn't able to give you any morals, but they say follow the science, and if you do, you're moral, you're good. Right? Who's the science that they're following? Well, it's the people who are in charge. The people who are in charge are telling you what science to believe and what science to not believe. So it's basically saying follow the, the institution. Institution is the church. As long as you follow what the institution tells you, you're a good person and you didn't sin yet. Well, lo and behold, guess what? Now you have new problems. Oh, same problems as when we had the Catholic Church in the olden days, back during the Crusades. Not to get too far into a topic I'm not really allowed to, but now we're in a second... No, what crusade would this be? No, it would be the first crusade of Scientism. Right? They're attacking people. They're going against people. They're trying to get rid of people. that don't agree with their version of the science. Anytime you say, well, I don't believe that particular thing, maybe I can be skeptical about it. Skepticism is now the enemy, because you can't have skepticism and scientism. Scientism is to blindly follow the science that's being given to you by the authority. So now we have people who are glorifying fallacies. Logic is thrown out the window. Rationality is thrown out the window. All reason is thrown out the window. And how did we get to this point? How did we get this scientism to become popular now? Well, it started with wokism, because wokism is the same thing, only in a different direction. Both of them are civil religions. But wokism included identity politics. And if you go into the definition that Jordan Peterson uses, he calls it as a sort of neo-Marxist rhetoric combined with identity politics and also intersectionality to create what is a social justice warrior mentality, but like an updated version, a 2.0. And intersectionality is a hard word because it's jargon, but all that means is that if you have a person, they have different groups they belong to. And so intersectionality says the more marginalized groups you belong to, the more marginalized you are. The more oppressive groups you belong to, the more oppressive you are, because you belong to these groups. And all that is just mumbo jumbo. I thought we were all supposed to be individuals. And that's also what Hans-Georg Muller believes. That he thought that wokeism was about the individual. He believes that it's about a liberal concept, but no. He got that wrong because he believed their nonsense. He believed the lie. They keep on telling themselves, I'm an individual, I'm myself, I am me, it's my identity, it's determined by me, but nope, that's not how it works. They're not determining their own identity. They're just following the labels. In the early 2000s, we had people who were it was actually a trend. They were saying, I don't want to follow any labels. I want to be myself. I don't want to put any labels. It was like hyper skepticism. And that's what postmodernism was all about. It was about being skeptical of everything. But postmodernism has evolved because they're only being skeptical of certain things. So when you have pure postmodernism, it's like pure skepticality of everything. You're skeptical of everything. There can't be anything objective. No absolutes. Only the Sith deals in absolutes, right? That's postmodernist context. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. That's what a postmodernist would say. Maybe some modernists, but never a premodernist. Premodernist would say absolutes are absolutely necessary because that's how they think. They think in objectivity. So when it comes to Muller's idea of postmodernism and wokeism, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. He's not saying it wrong. He's just giving you different definitions from different words because he's approaching it as a philosopher. And then Jordan Peterson, he's approaching it as colloquial, how we all know these terms, how we use them, how we can easily understand them. You know, you don't need to define it while you're telling people what it is. So when he says neo-Marxists, he's not saying they believe in Marxism. He's saying they're postmodernists and they believe in that there's an oppressor and an oppressed. And in order to create a utopia, we had to remove the power from the oppressors. And what causes them to be the oppressors becomes a factor of whether you are being a race Marxist or just a pure Marxist. When it comes to, pure Marxist is economic, race Marxist is about race, sexist Marxist would be like feminism, like Marxist feminist, right? And you would say that the male, the patriarchy, they're oppressing the females. So there is like something called a queer Marxism, but it's actually just called queer theory. That one started in the 1990s, and it was in connection to gay activism around the AIDS crisis because, you start fucking some butts, you're gonna get some AIDS, right? And according to school kids, if you fuck a monkey, you get AIDS. And if you fuck a monkey in the ass, it's like times 2, right? You're 2 times more likely to get AIDS. Fucking a gay monkey, Well, anyway, plowing through, pun intended. So Jordan Peterson's definition is much more understandable, while Muller's definition is more like specific. And Muller's definition doesn't correlate with what we're talking about when we talk about wokism, because when we talk about good, have you ever heard the slogan, go get woke, go broke? Well, that's what we consider as woke capitalism, but that's not even a really good term. That's like saying state capitalism. Doesn't mean anything. Capitalism is separate from the state, and they say, well, what if the state wanted profit from these companies? It's like, that's not capitalism. That's just a Marxist term. That's the thing. Marxist terms always counteract the actual terms we use in society. And then Marxists bitch about it because they're like, well, why aren't you using our terms? And we're like, because your terms demonize things that made us benefit from everything. Your terms suck. That's why we don't use them. So woke capitalism is actually woke corporatism, because it's about corporations sacrificing themselves and their wealth for the sake of an agenda. And the agenda is to virtue signal for these marginalized groups. These marginalized groups that are, the more marginalized they are, the more they have a virtue signal for them. But most of the time, it's actually not what is more marginalized. It's what's more acceptable. So in a place like America, blacks are considered very oppressed. We never hear about Native Americans. We never hear about, illegals anymore. We never hear about refugees anymore, right? Now it's all about the blacks. Well, why is that? Well, it's because blacks make up a huge amount of the population as a marginalized group. It's a bigger group than the Jews, bigger group than the Asians, bigger group than, well, it's not bigger than the Mexican, but the Mexicans are considered white in this particular case. White until proven guilty. White until proven brown. And that's when they do the little Family Guy color-coded marker with Peter staring at the screen. So both Jordan and Muller, they make amazing points in their videos. If you ever watched any of their videos, I would say go check them out, because Muller, his YouTube channel is called Carefree Thinking. Jordan Peterson, just go Google up his name, type in wokism, you'll find a whole bunch of shit. But Muller says he disagrees with Jordan, and I'm like, no, you're not disagreeing with him, you're just talking past him. I think Muller has it partially correct, but he got it wrong when he tried to make a sense of this one chick who's like from the CIA, and she's like, I am aggressively proud of my identity or something like that. And she was like, I don't follow any labels. And then she goes ahead and like labels herself as like a single mother, and she said that she's a Latina, and she's like a woman. I think she said she was a lesbian. I think she said she was also like mentally disabled because she had anxiety or like PTSD or something. But you know what? She was just naming out all these things that caused her to be part of the intersectionality, sorry. So she was telling people how oppressed she was when she did that. She was saying to people, this is where I am on the oppression ladder. And the oppression ladder, the more lower you are, the farther away you are from being the oppressor. And she's pretty much saying, I'm not here to oppress you, I'm one of you. And this is how they believe people are going to respond. They think that people are going to go, oh my god, she's one of me. She's representing me. She's representing my group. It's like I'm there. Right? And all of this in media, I'm sorry to say this, but all this in media is actually based on the idea that if you have a fantasy world, or you have like this this alien world, right? Like you have like the movie, what was it called? The Wall? The Great Wall? Around the same time that Trump was president, they had a movie called The Wall, but it wasn't about America, it was about the Chinese wall, and it had like dragons coming from the wall, because there was some kind of like portal, like a Pacific Rim sort of portal, like in the north. And they're like, we're not trying to stop the Huns, we're trying to stop these dragons. And my god, that was actually a really beautiful movie when it came to like some of the action scenes, because I love the colors. Maybe it reminded me of Dynasty Warriors for half the time, but other than that, it was fucking stupid. The one part that actually did impress me was this part where there is these girls, these like this woman brigade, and they would like fall down the wall with like these like silk ropes, and they would like slash them with these giant pikes. I thought that was actually pretty badass. That takes balls or ovaries, whatever they got. That takes that takes labia, dude. But that's what the entire movie... Yeah, oh. But the movie didn't have very much to do with the wall because, we didn't get much of China in the movie. And whatever we did get from China, we had it explained to us by having it wasn't even an American. It was Matt Wahlberg. No, who was it? Matt Wahlberg? Oh, it was Matt Damon. It was William Dafoe was there? Pedro Pascal. Oh my god, I don't remember any of those guys. Well, that shows you how good the movie was. So, Matt Damon, that guy. He was the white guy who introduces us into the world because apparently they got lost or something. So, it was like a bunch of Europeans speaking English, goes to China, they speak English too. And then he's like, what's going on here? And they're like, we're Chinese and we have dragons attacking us. He's like, what's going on over here? And they're like, this is rice and we're eating like... we're eating with chopsticks. He's like, what's going on here? And then they're like, oh, this is jade and this is silk. And so they were just explaining all their Chinese stuff to Matt Damon. And then the movie uses this to create a link to Western audience, because Western audience will be like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what they're doing. I need something to combine. I need something to link my culture with theirs. And that's the whole fish out of water experience in any movie. You have some character who's not from that place. They enter the place. They have no idea what's going on. And then they get shown the whole experience. And this, Harry Potter, you have Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, Pinocchio, all these things, fish out of water, right? Thor, he's like, what's going on here? And they're like, this is a car, and we're in America. He's like, what's going on here? Like, this is a burger, and that's the taco. I was like, oh, by Odin, I'm going to eat this taco. So this is what wokism is evolved from in media. It's evolved from the fish out of water, but apparently somebody somewhere, they decided, oh, what if there's a bunch of people who are a fish out of water in the real world? They need some representation. They need to be shown tinier pieces of culture. We can't just explain American stuff to an American. Now we gotta explain gay things to the straights. We gotta explain Mexican stuff to the... we gotta explain the illegal stuff to the legals. We have to explain black stuff to the whites, right? Woman stuff to the men. And that kind of started to happen when it was, I think in around the 90s. You had TV shows and they were explaining, well, this is what women do. That's what men do. This is the woman stuff. That's the men stuff. Women don't think that way. The men think that way. This is why you're oppressing us. And it was all over TV shows in the 90s. We didn't really care because we're like, oh, that's just funny, And you started to see those shows. You know what show I'm talking about. You can't really put your finger on any particular episode. But you ever see those TV shows in the 90s where like a woman would punch a man and the man just like flies across the room? Or a woman, she would just like throw a man to the ground and beat him up. Or like it would be like a bunch of women beat him up. Like I think Married with Children did that all the time just to be funny. They had like a bunch of fat women beat up Al because he always be making fun of fat women because he worked at a shoe store and he had to like smell their stinky feet all day. And he wasn't one of those freaks who likes that. Yeah, just imagine that show being made now. He wouldn't be dreading the day of work. He would be like, I'm going to work, honey. And then he would have like a big goofy smile on his face. Because he would be able to smell those stinky fishy toes. But that's where it came from, pretty much. Fish out of water. And then it evolved from all this intersexuality. And I keep saying intersectionality. And it's also, pack on this neo-Marxism, pack on this identity politics, pack on civil religion. So they pretty much turned the whole thing into a religion. And when you're watching media, you're watching this religion play out. And when we say religious, we really do mean it's religious. Like, they believe in the original sin. And the original sin is based on what you were born with. So if you are a white actor trying to play any role, you're going to have a harder time because now they want black actors. They want people who are not of the oppressive group. And surprisingly enough, this also affects the Jews. So you have a whole bunch of Jews in Hollywood, right? A whole bunch of actors. And they can't get these gigs now because they're either too big or they're considered white. So they can't actually get a white gig anymore. You can't have somebody like Edward G. Robinson playing as an Italian. Can't happen anymore. That's why all these movies changed. We can't have movies like we used to unless they're made by old people. You know, now Will Smith is like one of the biggest action stars and he's like 50. Like, what the fuck happened? What happened to action movies? We can't have that anymore because now action movies can't be action-y. Now they have to be thrillers, right? They have to be... What was that movie he made? I think it was called Twins. It was with Will Smith and Kevin Hart. It's like the remake of that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. Might as well be. No, it was called Gemini or something. And it was like Will Smith and they had to fight against each other. But you know what I'm talking about. And then now we have movies where they do gender swapping. What's that called? I already forgot what it was called. Feminist Ghostbusters, right? Who watched that and enjoyed it? Who walked in there not knowing what's going to happen and walked out of there with a big smile on their face and enjoyed it? And didn't want their money back? That movie was the most postmodernist, nonsensical thing I've ever heard of. I never even saw it. I've seen reviews of it. I've seen plenty of clips to understand the whole entire story. But there's no way in heck I'm going to give my money to that thing. Like, the entire movie was ad-libbed. They just made shit up as they went along. And they hoped nobody would notice. And they thought that their comedy powers, their feminist comedy gold was going to get them through the whole thing. No, sorry, it didn't. Oh my goodness, that was like a multi-million-dollar YouTube video. And then we have Ocean's 8, where it's like, instead of Ocean's 11 with men, based on that old-ass movie from the 60s with Frank Sinatra and the rest of the Rat Pack. Now they have... I think it's Rihanna and the rest of her crack pack. What was the movie? Yeah, you got Sandra Bullshit, Kate Blanchett. Oh shit, Anna Hathaway is there. Helena Bonham? What was her name? Helena Bonham Carter? She's in that movie too? What the fuck? Mindy Kaling? Aquafina? Hey, look at that. Matt Damon's there too. Wow. He's in all these shitty movies. So, I have never seen Ocean's 8, but just hearing these names being in there sounds like a riot. Not in the way they expected. Sounds more funny than feminist Ghostbusters, but not in the way they intended. So that's why I'm against wokism. You have these stupid movies coming out, they swap the gender, nothing changes. Other than making the entire quality go down. You have things like Disney making Star Wars. I know I always throw this one out, but why did you have to ruin the third trilogy so horribly wrong? There was nothing to offer in that trilogy other than some special effects, and that's it. You had a woman who was way too overpowered. She became a Mary Sue, and then they had like 3 different directors who all had like a different idea on what to do. And then the black guy that they fought so hard to make like a character, they just like kind of packed him in there in like the second and third movie because they had nothing to do with him anymore. And they had like that one fat Asian chick, and she like crashed her spacecraft because she was too heavy for it. And then they're like in the middle of a battlefield, and she's like, is it possible to fall in love on the battlefield or something like that? It was something stupid. And everything's all rusty around them. Oh my goodness. Like, what the hell is that movie even about? What is that trilogy about? It was just trying to pack in so many things together. They didn't care anymore. They didn't care about the story. They didn't care about giving you anything theme related. They just wanted to represent. They just wanted to have fat Asian girl. Boom. And then we got Baby Yoda to represent the midgets. Boom. And then we have the black guy to represent black people. Boom. Oh, and they had like a feminist robot? Whose idea was that? Why is the robot feminist? Who the... Do you remember that part? There's like a Marxist feminist robot who starts like this robot revolution. You know what that means thematically? That means that these people are just programmed to say what they're saying. It's just all programming. I don't know if that's incredibly based or just really horribly woke. And that's what makes it so funny when you see woke things. You don't know what they're actually doing anymore because of how based it looks accidentally. So that's what's so weird about wokism is that it doesn't know what it's trying to say, but it definitely does want to say something, and it's trying to force people to say these things. And it just constantly changes every season. No, yeah, so like every time somebody gets canceled by the woke, they're not being canceled for what they're saying now. They get canceled for what they said 10 years ago, 30 years ago. You know, back in the 1800s, Lincoln was canceled because apparently he wasn't woke enough back then in like the 1800s. Because now they're calling him racist, even though he's the dude that freed the slaves. And they're like, well, he didn't do it because he liked black people. He did it because he didn't hate them. It's like, what the fuck are you on about? It's the 1800s, huh? Do you know what? You can't judge somebody on what you think now. It's like looking at a caveman and trying to cancel them because they didn't wear enough clothes. So wokeism is just a big, huge waste of time, but we're forced to deal with this if we join a traditional publisher, a mainstream game studio, like a mainstream movie production. If you want to relate to people on Twitter, well, you have to obey the woke crowd. You have to obey the woke church. You have to follow the ways of the church, the rites, the rituals. And if you don't, you have to flagellate yourself in front of everybody. You have to whip yourself with, I think it's called flagellate, right? Flagellant, right? That's when you had like a bunch of whips, like a cat of nine tails, and you add like a bunch of like razor blades and like broken glass on it, and you whip yourself. You had to do that just to make them say, okay, we'll back off for now, right? It's like you playing possum with them. You're just pretending like you're dead. Like you're, oh, please don't. I'm beaten up already. And they go, okay, well, the cat can't play with the mouse, so the mouse is dead, so we'll go ahead and leave you alone for now until you start running around again. So you can't do anything unless you are obeying them. And you have to obey this thing that it doesn't know what it even wants to say anymore. Because there's so many different groups trying to say one thing and another, and all these groups contradict themselves. If they try to work together, they can't. Critical race theory, critical feminist theory, critical queer theory, they all counter each other. They all say they're the more oppressed one. And people on the left, if they ever hear this, they're going to say, that's not true because they're not saying anything. It's just a lens. Okay, well, these lenses all counter each other. I can't see the same thing with all three lenses. I see nothing with all three lenses because then it's not going to say anything. Because if I say, let's say that we want to have gay men benefit from something, benefit from existence, right? We had to have gay on gay men for them to be gay, right? You have to have another man there. Now, what if women are too manly? What if they look like men? Well, then the gay man is going to be... They're going to be starting to turn straight or what? What is it that the gay man wants other than a male body to admire? Do they want a manly attitude? Do they want a manly biology? Do they want a Y chromosome that they can't see? Do they want a manly smell? What do they want exactly? Well, they just want to look at something that's manly and have sex with something that looks like a man, right? Well, a masculine woman who's a radical feminist would definitely throw a wrench into that works, right? If we have people following critical race theory and they go, well, your race is oppressing my race. And they go, well, I can't because I'm half of both. Right? 50-50. Let's say it's 50-50 right there, split down the middle. Well, who are they oppressed or are they an oppressor? Well, then it goes to their culture. Well, what do they have 50% of each culture? Does even a single bit of another culture make you that other culture? Like, what's the cutoff rate of culture to turn you into a black person? What's the cutoff rate to turn you into a white person? 50%? 25%? 0.0001%? Like, that question is very valid. But they can't answer that because they don't know. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they want to say. It's all just baseless accusations and baseless racism coming from them, the woke crowd. The ones who are using this so-called tool to defend the people that they're saying they're defending. But they don't. They just harm them. And they're just splitting hairs over no reason. Only when it benefits them. If it doesn't benefit them, no splitting hairs. It's just an amorphous shape, man. We're all one human, man. We're all the human race, man, right? That's when it's appropriate. But then when a white person walks into the room, oh, you're white, you're evil, you're this, you're that, blah, everything. What happens if the white person says they're trans, huh? Are they the oppressed now, or are they the oppressor? They don't want to tell you what's more oppressed and what isn't. They can't tell you that. And that's why corporations, they know what they're doing. It looks like they're being stupid, right? You see the corporations spending hundreds of millions of dollars on works that don't work. Smurfs movie. Emoji movie. Pixel, right? All these movies that seem that they're just fucking garbage. Why would anybody pay to see this? But you know what? They're not being stupid with that. It's secretly genius. You know what it is? They're lowering our expectations so low that the second they make anything even remotely good, we appreciate it. We praise it. What did we do recently that we did that with? I forget when this movie came out. What was that one? It was that Spider-Man movie with the black guy, Milo, right? The animated one. It was so generic, but it was actually sort of good. People gave it such a pass. They're like, oh my god, this is like the best movie I've seen all year. Yeah, because you had to compare it to fucking garbage, right? What are you going to compare it to? This is like comparing, a glass of piss to a glass of water. I don't know, a glass of water might sound better than that, but that's not going to be as enjoyable as, whatever the heck is like an enjoyable drink to you. Champagne, I don't even know what people drink. Orange juice, soda pop, delicious boiled up Mountain Dew. I don't know what you drink. Something that's delicious to you, alright? Just think of that. It's terrible, but that's what's going on. They're lowering our expectations so low that we end up praising and cheering when we see something even remotely mediocre. That's what Avengers is all about. Avengers blew up the box office, right? The entire world was going crazy over Endgame. That's the one, right? That's the second one? Ooh. Endgame, right. 2019, boom. If you try to compare it to any other movie out there, you would say that this is like a generic movie, like a generic action movie. This is like, I don't know, like a slightly better version of The Hobbit, if it took place on Earth. Like it was like around the same amount of entertainment and quality as perhaps like the second Harry Potter movie, right? Maybe even the third one. It just had less moments that annoyed you, less parts that bugged you. And you praise it, you cheer for it, and the whole world went cuckoo for it. And why not? Because it had the action, it had the diversity, it had the inclusion, except for, I think they had like 5 Chinese people. No, they had like 2, right? I think one of them was a white woman that had a shaved head. I don't even remember seeing Chinese people in the movie. Is Thanos considered Chinese because he's purple? Well, either way. That's what wokism does to us. It lowers our expectations, and that's why corporations depend on it, because they go, oh, well, here's a crappy movie. Here's another one. And people are like, oh, fuck. Stop giving me crappy movies. They're like, all right, here's one that's kind of good. And they go, that's kind of good. Guess what, though? They include something that's about diversity, representation, some kind of social justice thing in there, and they kind of sneak it in there. And I noticed this with a lot of animated movies. There's a lot of animated movies now. They're trying to be more representative of things like lesbians. It's almost always lesbians. I don't know why. It's like, what the fuck is up with animated movies and lesbians? I guess because those are the people that draw. Yeah, it probably is. And you'll have anime does this. What was that time? There's a time where like anime was doing like a lot of gay stuff with trans people. And anime knew what it was doing there. This was a time when, there was Trump, there was the alt-right, 4chan was still going crazy, right-wing style. And we had a whole bunch of things representing lolly and a whole bunch of things representing trans people. Like that one character, I forgot the name, but it's like a cat. Looks like a cat girl, but it's a cat guy. And this other character that was trans too. And that was starting to be snuck in. And people were like, well, this is a decent show. And then now we have these things in here. And I'm not saying take it out of there. They can have whatever they want in their art. Nobody cares. Like, why would I want to say, no, take that out of there? Here's the thing that people don't realize about me. I don't care if there is gay stuff in my art, okay? It's like seeing marshmallows in your Lucky Charms. Some works require that, okay? Because everything else is just so bland, you need some color in there, right? One of my favorite shows is Warehouse 13. And they had a lot of feminism in there. They had a lot of gay stuff in there. They had one of the main characters, he was a gay Buddhist, right? And at first I'm thinking, oh my god, they're making fun of my people with the Buddhist thing. But no, he was like a normal dude, but he just happened to be gay. And I think he was gay just because like a joke. And they're like, oh fuck, now we gotta run with this. So they didn't make him like gay. He wasn't like prancing around throwing glitter everywhere. He wasn't tiptoeing through the tulips or anything. He was like a cop, and then he just happened to be gay and just happened to be a Buddhist. And then one of my favorite comics when I was younger was this one called Wet Moon. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's kind of like really random and obscure, but it was all about fucking lesbians. It was like lesbians on lesbians. The entire comic, but it was interesting because it showed me this world that I never seen before of like these college girls, and they were just, slice of life living. It had twists, it had moments where you didn't really expect it. It had also information about like I learned this stuff about like, people get these bumps on their ears from piercings. I never heard about that. So it taught me all these things that I didn't know about. And it was interesting to see that kind of world that I've never seen before, because that's not my world. I've never been to college. I'm not a lesbian, And the characters were real. It was like a slice of life. So when it's appropriate, who the fuck cares? Nobody should care if there is a gay character there. The problem comes when it's woke, because these weren't woke, alright? Warehouse 13 was made before woke was a thing. Wet Moon was made before that was a thing. This is like, way before 2010. No, this is like near 2010, These weren't woke yet. These were just some stories that happen to have certain themes and certain characters that were gay, and they just happened to have that. It's not like Rush Hour was being woke with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, right? Like, who the hell would call that woke? That's not woke. That's just two guys. Two guys showing each other their culture. You know, both of them are fish out of water. You know, you have Chris Tucker. He's entering this world of like fighting Chinese guys with like martial arts. And then you have Jackie Chan. He goes into a bar, tries to copy what Chris Tucker did. And he starts fighting the black guys in there. Because he didn't get the pass, if you know what I mean. And that was just making fun of how different people are. You know, nobody would consider that woke. So that's the thing. Call this gay, call this lame, but I want my 90s back. I want my early 2000s back. I want that time where we didn't have to worry about diversity. We didn't have to worry about representation. We didn't have to worry about gender swapping or deconstructions. Like, none of this was deconstruction yet. This is all still modernist. But they were not the same thing as, you know, the postmodernist nonsense we have now. And I don't think that, what's his name? I don't think that Quentin Tarantino forces diversity into his movies, does he? I don't think so. I think he just wants to do things that are exploitation. You know, Django Unchained was blaxploitation, making fun of, you know, it was a satire, it was an homage to those old movies where, like, you know, black guy gets his revenge, fighting against the man. The man happened to be slave owners. Everyone wins, right? Inglourious Bastards, you have a bunch of Jews fighting Nazis. Everybody wins. Why would you know, like it's really tenseful. And people, they were like, oh my god, you know, Quentin Tarantino, he made the Nazi look, what? No, what? Were all the Nazis evil? I think there's one guy that we're like kind of sympathetic for. And then that one Jewish girl, she like kills him. Even though he was like really nice to her and he was like trying to date her. And that was actually a really nice moment because, you know, he didn't care who she was. He didn't know that she was Jewish. As long as he didn't know she was Jewish, then it was no problem. But that was actually a really weird thing back in the day. I think in the 60s. They had some movies like that. There's one movie called Kings Go Forth. I love this movie. You have to watch it. It's an amazing modernist movie. It has Frank Sinatra and and Tony Curtis, right? And you got these dudes, they're in the middle of World War II, and they're like in France, and they're like fighting through the whole thing. And then they meet this chick, this like French girl, and they're both after her. And the chick, she's like, she wants this one guy, I think it's Tony Curtis, right? And then Tony Curtis, it's funny because Tony Curtis is a Jew. And then so she's like, listen, I have to tell you something. But she doesn't tell Tony Curtis. She tells Frank Sinatra. She's like, I gotta tell you something, Frank. He's like, what? And she's like, listen, I got a black child. No, she didn't say I got a black child. She said, I'm black. She's like, white, but her father was black. And she's like, white as... It's played by Natalie Wood. It's like the most whitest girl you can ever find. And when I say white, I mean like Slavic. Like she's from like straight up Serbia. So... So you got this chick, and she's like, listen, I'm black. And she's like, he black, she black. And then Frank's like, oh my god, I gotta tell Curtis, but guess what? Tony Curtis, he doesn't like black women. And then Tony Curtis is like, what's going on here? And then Sinatra's like, she black. And then she's like, is this true? And he's like, oh, and he like tears his shirt up, and he like runs out of there screaming. Because he didn't realize. Oh my god, that's a beautiful movie. I love movies like that. That one and Guess Who's Coming for Dinner. Oh my god, that was the perfect time. Those are the movies I want to see. Those are the movies I want to see talking about racial relations. Nobody wants to see... I don't even know what a movie is now that has racial relations. It's so obnoxious now. Like that one show... There was Dear White People. What's that other one called? Oh well, I can't find it. It was this dumb show, right? It's very obnoxious in how much it hates white people. And it's talking about like how terrible white people are and doesn't say anything. Oh, you know what? There's another show that did that. Scream, season 3. Have you ever seen Scream, the show? First, second season are amazing. I love the show when it's the first and second season. That was a great show. And then the third season, they made it from, who took it? VH1 took it. And then, like, somebody else directed it and wrote it. And the entire show became about race relations. This is Scream. This is about slasher flicks being satirized, right? Satirical slasher film. Satirical slasher show. And it's about race relations? Are you fucking kidding me? You're watching this show and you're like, ma'am, please, this is a Wendy's. This is not the place for that. No, fucking Wendy's. So that's wokism in a nutshell. That's how I think about it. And wokism also started up some other issues that we have to deal with, even in the indie scene. So when it comes to indie authors, now we have people being called racist if they do cultural appropriation. And cultural appropriation is if you take something from a culture and then you appropriate it, or you take it and then you make it into your own use. So if a white person takes, dreadlocks, that's considered a cultural appropriation. Now, apparently there's something else called cultural appreciation, and this is when you pretty much homage something. That's another way that's a good way to look at it. So appreciation is when you make an homage, and appropriation is like when you downright copyright it. You're just stealing it, and you're calling it your own. Well, most of these people who take something from a culture, they're not calling it their own. And you can't really do that with art. So you can't really culturally appropriate art. All you can do is pastiche or homage or something like that. You can't steal from a culture unless you're stealing the actual subject. And you're removing it from the previous person. You're telling people, no, this is mine now. So whenever somebody says cultural appropriation in media, they're fucking lying. They don't know what it means. How do you appropriate culture in media? You can't. If you watch MXC, it's like a spoof. They make it funny, but they take footage from Takashi's Castle. These people from the woke side, they would say that's cultural appropriation, but no, it's just taking it and making it funny. You're transforming it. You're making your own thing. That's why one's called MXC, the other one's called Takashi's Castle. It's like Power Rangers. Power Rangers is cultural appropriation now? Are you fucking kidding me? Just because it's not Super Sentai, right? Because it's not Super Sentai and it's in English and now you have American actors, now that's cultural appropriation? And now that's evil? Now that's supposed to be canceled? That's fucking dumb. But you know what? Nobody ever talks about Power Rangers culturally appropriating because I don't think people even know about Power Rangers at this point. But the new movie, yes, that was actually woke. They added in all this nonsense about lesbians for no reason. It wasn't like, hey, this character is lesbian, just let it go. No, it was like, that was almost part of the plot at that point. And that's the thing. You have this forced representation, this forced diversity, and you just shove it in there. And they had that one girl, who was it? The Indian chick who also played Princess Jasmine. I'm sorry, is that cultural appropriation because she's not actually Arabic, she's Indian? Is that considered bad casting because she's simply brown? That's like, these people, they get so angry when you don't cast somebody properly as like the race that's supposed to be. It's like you have these Jewish people playing Arabic guys, or you have like white people playing Egyptians, and you have the blacks, they go, you wasn't kings and shit, we was kings and shit. We were the Egyptians. It's like, really? Were you now? Huh? Were you really the Egyptians? Because that wasn't really the case. You guys weren't the Egyptians. According to all the science, all the archaeological digs, everything, Elizabeth Taylor was more Egyptian than any black person was, okay? I know I'm going to get canceled for saying that, but she was actually a decent casting because she actually fit the criteria of being Egyptian for that type of era. like, you can't make this shit up. I wish you could, because then you can sell it and you can make money off of it as fiction. But no, it's real. This is how crazy these people are, and you have to deal with them when you're an artist, especially if you're online. That's why I wasn't political at all when I started doing art. I knew nothing about politics. I was practically a socialist when I started doing art. I wrote one of my first stories thinking that it was like a utopia. I was like, oh, this is going to be pretty cool. I'm going to make it very socialist, where the government forces the people to follow like some kind of school that's going to be their job for the rest of their life. And I thought that was like a utopian idea. And like a month later, I'm like, no, this is actually a dystopia. This is a horrific nightmare. And I found all these problems and issues with that world, but I kept it because that was a great theme to go with. And that was when I started becoming a little bit political, when I started to examine my own theme. That and also American healthcare, but that's another story for another time. Another thing that is part of the woke that you're going to deal with are people talking about sensitivity readers. And sensitivity readers is not that popular unless you're forcing it or unless you're promoting it. So if you never heard of a sensitivity reader, which is very likely because this is just so niche, it's pretty much where you hire somebody from the group, the marginalized group, that you don't want to offend, and you pay them to tell you if you offended them or not. And this person, usually a white woman, will tell you if you offended particular groups. And the goal, or I guess the basic idea, is to have certain people who are so oppressed, they will find anything to be offended by. And you, as the author, are supposed to pay these people to read your story and tell you how racist, sexist, and homophobic you are. Queerphobic, whatever the heck it is. If that's not a scam, I don't know what is. That's 100% a scam. That is, well, you can't really call it a scam legally, so it's a scam in a video game, but it's a huge bamboozle. Who the fuck is going to be paying money to be called racist? I do that for free. I get called a sexist for free. I get called a homophobic and queerphobic for free. I don't need to pay anybody to tell me that. Alright, it's going to offend you. You know how easy that is? Just writing in English is going to offend you because apparently English is a racist language because it's a language of white people, according to these folk. Having orcs in Lord of the Rings is racist because apparently orcs represent the black people, and this is according to black people. They try to claim the orcs as them because the orcs are violent and barbaric and savage. It's like, I didn't make that connection, you did, motherfucker. What are you on about? I thought the orcs were just generalized demons, a symbolic form of a demon or some kind of evil, some kind of evil soldier. I just pictured them as monsters. I didn't picture them as black people. Who the fuck is saying that these are black people? But apparently that's supposedly a valid conclusion. Same with saying that all Jews are lizard men. This is what the woke believe. They believe that if you say lizard people or lizard men or reptoids, you're talking about Jews right away. And I questioned one of these people online because I saw that in action. I'm like, I always question people because it's like, where the fuck do you get this idea? I'm fascinated, right? I see crazy. I had to investigate. I'm the white guy in the horror movie, all right? I pull out my flashlight and I investigate, even if it's going to kill me, because that's what we do. It's because we don't die right away. we got the plot armor. And the person was explaining to me, like, oh yeah, it's a code. So if you were saying anything about lizard men, you're talking about the Jews. I'm like, does that mean that the lizard people that came from Conan the Barbarian is talking about the Jews? Are you calling the writer of Conan the Barbarian, Robert E. Howard, are you calling him an anti-Semite? And they're like, oh, no, I'm not calling him an anti-Semite. I'm just calling anybody who says it now an anti-Semite because it relates to some kooky conspiracy theorist person. So it's like, if you're related to any conspiracy theory or if you talk about conspiracy theory. So according to this person, Lindsay Ellis is anti-Semitic because she wrote a book about conspiracy theories and aliens. And that makes her relate to the reptoids, which makes her relate to the reptoid Jew thing. And that makes her against Jews. Like, that's the path that they follow when they're trying to make an accusation. They're like, well, this relates to that relates to this. So therefore, if A is next to B and B is next to C, that means A and C are the same thing. That's their frame of logic. All right? It's like saying that 1 is next to 2, 2 is next to 3, so that means 1 equals 3. How the fuck does somebody think that way? Well, it's easy because they don't think at all. They're just trying to accuse people of something, they're just bullshitting along the way. They're hoping that something sticks. They're throwing shit against the wall. They're throwing their spaghetti hoping it sticks, but it's never cooked, right? They never fully cook it, so it doesn't stick to the wall. They're throwing dry spaghetti here. So you got sensitivity readers, and you got cultural appropriation, and then you also have this thing that started to pop up recently. Thank you, whoever created it. The hashtag on Twitter called Own Voices. I think you've heard of this one, right? This is big in writing. This is big in books because there was an issue on Oprah where there was a Puerto Rican lady and she wrote a book about illegal Mexicans in America. And it was supposed to be like a fake memoir. It was like a slice of life. It was trying to show the world of illegals. But it was written by a Puerto Rican woman. Okay? So, because she was Latino and Hispanic, but she wasn't Mexican, people called her a racist for claiming that she was, or for making people think that she was an illegal Mexican. So apparently she was like racist, and I think they call it classist because when it comes to illegal and legal, they call that class. Because it's no longer about, whether you have money or not. Now it's about legal status as well. So the legal are oppressing the illegal, even though the illegal get way more benefits. And people go, no, they don't get any benefits. Really? Really? They can commit any crime they want, and they don't go to jail. They get sent out of the country. They go back in, and then they do the crime again. And that's if they get caught, because there is no database on what their fingerprints are. There is no database on who their identity is. You can't find them because they're illegal. There's no paper trail. So how is that not a benefit? They can do whatever the fuck they want at that point. Calm down. Alright? This is this is not the time. This is not the place. I'll save that one for another time. But own voice. Right? This woman, she gets called racist, sexist, homophobic, classist, whatever the heck you can throw it out there. And I'm thinking to myself, how is this actually an issue? What's the problem here? Where's the damage? And they go, oh, well, the thing is that it's taken away the voice. I had somebody online tell me this, straight up. This is what they believed. They were saying it's bad and evil because it's taken away the voice of actual illegals and actual Latinos. And I'm like, well, first off, she's a Latino because she's Puerto Rican. She says this in an interview, she's Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans are Latino, if you happen to know, right? Central America. They're in Central America, right? Yeah, but Central America. But they're just not Mexican. So it's not a racial issue. It's just a national issue. So apparently there's the voice of Mexicans being oppressed by a Puerto Rican. I don't know about you, but I think there's more books in Mexico than there are in Puerto Rico. I'm not sure, but I think Mexico's a little bit bigger, has a little bit bigger population than Puerto Rico, right? So if it's a national issue, it's going to be Mexico who's oppressing Puerto Ricans. And a Puerto Rican doing this kind of thing is probably a good thing, right? Especially from a woman. They call me crazy, but I don't mind if a woman writes a book. That's cool, right? Women read books, women write books. Let them, who cares? Oh, but no, I'm the bad guy because I say that. I'm the evil one because I say, go ahead and let that woman write her book. Let her keep it. And then these people online, they go, no, you can't let her keep that book. You know why? Because she's not illegal. I'm like, what the fuck? Not illegal? You can't write a book about illegals if you're not illegal? I can't write a book about murder if I'm not a murderer? What the fuck are you on about? What is this? Apparently you need to commit a certain crime to write a book about the crime. Well, good luck getting crime reports done that way. Good luck getting any thrillers out there or murder mysteries. And they go, no, that's fine. That's totally fine. Okay, well, what are you trying to tell me? And that's the thing. They can't tell you what they're trying to say. They can't actually say anything. All they can do is obfuscate, move around, move the goalposts. It's like, like in the game of chess when you had like only the kings left. And it's like king moves forward, king moves back, king moves forward, king moves back. But that's the thing. They want to complain about only a particular thing. Only particular things that benefit them. Or can make them look like they're virtue signaling. Like, here's a quote from this person. They said that, it's not about misappropriating the culture. It's about misappropriating the identity. The marginalized groups have difficulty getting their voices heard because it's being drowned out by people who are louder. And these louder people are like, bigger groups that are more into the media. And all this time I'm thinking, wow, this person really hates Jews, don't they? They don't want Jews to say anything. They don't want Jews at all in media, don't they? They want the whole entire thing dismantled. Like SpongeBob dismantling the establishment and biting down that big piece of wood in the Krusty Krab. And they make an example, right? Their example was, think of a straight author trying to write about gay experiences. They won't have any first-hand knowledge of those experiences, and the people who do have the first-hand knowledge, they'll be dismissed by the public because the straight person is louder. And that right there, my friends, is a zero-sum game. They're saying that the gay person won't have their voice heard because the other person is louder. So, if I'm at a rock concert and I'm trying to talk to somebody from across the street or something, they can't hear me. Alright? Because the other thing is louder. It's at like 100 decibels or whatever. My voice is at like 50, but it cuts it off. There's zero. There's nothing being heard. This is a zero-sum game. They're saying that they can't do anything because somebody else is louder. And then I confront this person and I tell them, no, every time I hear this term marginalized from this kind of direction, or it's about appropriating anything, I never get a clear answer as to why, what exactly this minority, what exactly is this marginalized thing is. I don't know what they're talking about. And then I make my own example. And my example, I think, is like the perfect example to make. I always tell people, try to think. I always try to tell them, so if you're telling me that somebody's being drowned out, does that mean that Asians can't have a voice in Asia because they're being drowned out in America? And they go, no, that's not at all what I'm saying. It's about, usually we're talking about America, so we're saying that if an Asian voice is in America, that's a good thing. If an Asian voice is in Asia, that's a good thing apparently too. Even though Asians make up the majority of Asian voices in Asia, right? So if you have a white person in Asia, that's considered bad to these people because there's too many white voices in America. And so that's when their whole entire argument dismantles itself. What the fuck are you trying to say? And that's what kind of pisses me off about the whole woke agenda, is that they don't know what they're saying. They're very angry when you question them. And at the end of the day, if you do question them, they stopped answering. They just don't have an answer anymore. Now it's just, oh, you question me, you're racist now. You question me, you're a Nazi now. You question me, you're homophobic, sexist, whatever the heck it is. Even though in reality, what do we have? What do we have in our media? We have a huge amount of Asian media in the world. Asian media is the biggest thing in the world. Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Indian. Hell, even Filipino is starting to grow, right? Representing Philippines. We have so much media coming out from all these Asian countries. America is only making so much, but the majority of the world's in Asia. People don't realize that America doesn't have as many people as India and China. India and China is 2 billion people. Right? Those two countries together is 2 billion people. America, like America and South America, both Americas, North, Central, and South America, it's only 1 billion people. Alright, so we have anything from India, they're representing 1 billion people. Anything from China, they're representing 1 billion people. If we have any media from either one, they're representing all of Asia, because they're Asians, and that's more than 2 billion people. That's a huge chunk of the world being represented, just from one of their movies, right? And what do you have in Chinese movies? Only Chinese people. What do you have in Korean movies? Only Korean people. Japanese movies? Only Japanese people, right? All these animes, they're all Japanese. That's why whenever somebody online, they'll say, oh, there's too many white people in media. What the fuck are you talking about? There's too many Asians in media. Have you never seen an Asian movie? That's how privileged these people are. That's how sheltered they are. They think that America runs the world. No, not even close. Not even with media. They just run your world. They just run what you see because you speak English in America, right? Assuming you speak English. If you only watch telenovelas all day, you think that everybody speaks Spanish. You think that telenovelas are running the world. It's not quite that way. It's just that you're in America and you experience American stuff. American stuff is in English. America is majority white. You would see a majority of white people. But then in media, we have to consider Jews as white. So you see a majority of, technically white people. Unless you're watching BET. Right? How many white people are on BET? You'll have like the whitest guy out there. The principal from Sister Sister, right? Shawn Michael Higgins, right? You'll have that guy in every single black show because he was considered like the whitest guy in television. And then in white media, you'll have black guys like Wayne Brady, right? That's what white people consider the blackest guy that's safe to put on TV. And that's the thing I don't get. Like, what exactly do they want? Do they want more representation than they actually deserve? And when I say deserve, I mean like in correlation with like their actual demographics. Do we need to have 12% of our 13% of media? Do we need that to be represented by blacks? What does that mean? 1 out of 10 people are going to be black in the show? That's kind of already what happened, so what the hell do you want? What are you complaining about? What's the issue? It's usually more than that. Almost always more than that. But no, they want all these groups. They want the black woman, they want the black gay man, they want the trans people, they want the Native American, they want the, I don't even know what else. You know what's a show that really did that well without being woke? Was Z Nation, one of my favorite zombie shows. I like it way more than Walking Dead. Only show that I liked more than that has zombies was High School of the Dead, but that doesn't really count since it's an anime. Oh god, I wish they had a second season, but that show had a huge amount of representation of everybody. Native American, Inuits, you had black people, Asians, Chinese people, straight out of China, right? You had all these people being put into the story, and they had a purpose in the story. They had a reason for being there. Because you had a black woman, Roberta. Oh my god, she was the greatest character I've seen in a while, right? She's one of my favorites, the black woman. The black woman, because she was actually a human. She was actually a character. She wasn't some kind of a token that they have now in woke. Like, that's the thing. Wokeness is tokenism. They keep saying, we don't want tokenism, we don't want tokenism. Even Lindsay Ellis, she goes, Disney is trying to be woke and all they can do is put in tokens. Yeah, because that's what you want. That's what you demanded. People like you, Lindsay, demanded these tokens. You wanted representation, and then you get it. You say you don't want it to be part of the story, but then when they don't put it part of the story, like the gay guy in Beauty and the Beast, you complain about it. You tell them to do one thing, you force them to do one thing, you boycott them, and you threaten them if they don't do it. And then when they do it, you complain about it and make a video about it. What the fuck is that about? And that's what these woke people always do. They complain, they demand one thing, you give it to them, they say, oh, that's not what we wanted. Really? That's like in SpongeBob with the little kids crying about the pistachio ice cream. And then the father just goes, ugh. Just fucking huffs in anger and depression, disappointment. Because that's all you're doing. You're responding to a child at that point. They don't know what they want. It's childish mentality. And that's why I just started to call these people babies. That's why I kind of make fun of them. I love to have Rugrats as like my symbols. Because that's what it is. It's baby mentality. And the baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do. These woke people are gonna cry, throw tantrums, scream, fall on the ground, flail, spin around like Curly from the Three Stooges. Whoop, 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 and they just go around and around. They don't know what to do. And then these are the people that media wants to follow. And trust me, it's not being done by accident. It's not because you're fools. They know what they're doing. There's an agenda. There's a weakening going on. They have to weaken culture because it's about anti-culture. Before we had culture, before we had something going on, now we're going through deconstruction of the culture, through anti-culture. Wokism is causing all of this. You know, you have people like, who's that bitch? The wet-ass pussy girl, right? What's her name? Cardi B, right? She's part of anti-culture. She's not creating anything. She's not making anything for us to admire. She's just destroying culture itself. We don't have a culture from her. What do we gain from her? Nothing. We lose from her. Same with the other girl, Nicki Minaj, right? Same with Miley Cyrus. Oh, that's another one. So I was reading back on what I was telling this person. Apparently there's also this thing called stay in your lane. And it's when they tell people who are white, male, straight, to stay in your lane. You're not allowed to be in our lane, in our media, in our culture, in our group. You have to stay in your lane. This is for all woke stuff. So wokeness relies on the stay in your lane mentality. You have your lane, I have mine. It's all divided by clear-cut lines, right? What is that line? When do I cross it? How do I cross it? They can't tell you until you anger them. Then that's when you've crossed it. Because intersectionality, that claims there are no lanes. It claims that you're just a spectrum of oppression. And the farther down on the spectrum you are, closer to oppressed, that's the more oppressed you are, right? So this combination with intersectionality contradicts stay in your lane mentality. And these people keep on saying stay in your lane, even if they claim they're not doing that. They'll tell you, you're not allowed to make the voice of somebody else. You have to use your own voice. Especially if you're claiming you are, which many people try to do these days because that's technically a trend in books, especially from traditionally published books. I don't know why that's a trend. That just seems stupid. That just seems like a really cheap parlor trick. It's like, hey, check it out. This is the own voice of a gay person. This is the own voice of somebody who's autistic. And it's like, okay, great. Why do I care? You guys are really gonna spend that much money on some book about autistic people? This all looks very counterproductive, but guess what? It's not. It's actually very productive because the products being sold is no longer the issue. These companies are huge. They make millions from nothing. They make money from one place and then they just throw it away into another. They're perfectly fine with taking on all these liabilities. Because you can't spell liability without lie, right? I think you can, but it's all a lie. These liabilities are a lie to you. So that's all I got for you for this one. I hope this was informative. I hope this was entertaining. I know it's a bit of a hard subject because it has to deal with, politics and all that stuff. I know a lot of people don't want politics in their art. But this entire thing was to tell you, hey, this is what's going on politically, and you can avoid that by being indie. You don't have to deal with that nonsense. You can make your indie stuff and not deal with it and be happy. Appeal to your own personal audience who doesn't appeal to that. Why do you have to give yourself a headache? And maybe just leave with that message at the very end. I could have just wrapped that all up with, don't give yourself a headache. Just give yourself your own enjoyment. Your own happiness from your own work that you own. You don't have to give to somebody else. You don't have to lose it or anything. Make art for art's sake. But also know what your audience wants. So many people, they say, oh, I want to make art for art's sake. I want to make it for myself. No, you could, but you can't make money like that. So if you want to do it for the art's sake, okay, do it. If you want to make it for money, okay, you got to know who the audience is. Alright, so this episode covered all woke. Next episode, we're going to go back to talking about writing and the process of writing. In the next episode, I think some of you might like it. Others might hate it. So a little heads up for when you actually do listen to it. But next episode, I'm going to be talking about tarot cards. Tarot cards and a little bit into supernatural elements. Now, tarot cards, zodiacs, and how this all relates to our personalities, our characters, our writing in general, how you can utilize these as tools, because in relation to alchemy, tarot cards and zodiacs and things like that are all valid. So it's going to be an extension of the previous podcast where I was talking about how to make art. So this entire woke one was about what to avoid in art. Next one's going to be what to do to make your art better. Because I don't want this whole thing to be negative. I don't want it to be all about me just complaining nonstop. I want people to be better at art. I want people to know better. I want to actually educate people on something that benefits them. So this was like a preventative measure. And then next episode is going to be how to flourish. And that's going to be for next time. So, till next time.